Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Thank you very much for joining us. Really pleased to have you here. It's a bit rainier outside today than it was the last time we did a webinar, so it's great to see so many of you join. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm hoping today we're not going to take up the full hour of your day. We're gonna whip through some bits and pieces around automation, and also understand what the Microsoft Power Platform is. So that might be a new concept to some of you. You may not realise that you already have access to it to some degree. But I want to show you some examples and kind of give you some new things to go and think about and understand. So thank you for joining me. What are we going to cover? Obviously, a little bit about the Power Platform as a whole, which incorporates other things, not just this thing, the item we're going to focus on today, which is Power Automate. But we are going to give you some Power Automate examples. So we're going to use a little bit of AI today to show you how we can use a customer service bot to sort of reply to emails. We're going to look at how we schedule emails or a schedule workflow within the business, how we use AI prompts to do some of this stuff, how document approval works or the approval processes as a whole, and introduce you to something called process mining, which you may or may not be familiar with, but a great way to actually use the Microsoft technology stack to interrogate processes within your organization and find out where you can optimize and increase productivity. And at the end, as always, we'll have a bit of time for questions, okay? So let's get underway then. So what is the Power Platform? You may have heard of Power BI at this point. This is a tool that allows us to create dashboards which bubble up and allow us to analyze data that we have in various places. You know, today we have more data and it's much more disparate than it ever has been. And I say to people when I speak to them, you know, 10 years ago, we'd have a server in the corner of our office. It would have everything about our business on it. So it would have all of our files and our email and everything we did was stored on this big beefy computer sat in a cupboard probably somewhere. But today it's really different, isn't it? You've got various third-party SaaS platforms that you use. You might use Salesforce and HubSpot. We've got the Microsoft 365 environment itself, where a lot of people are storing their documents and their emails and their to-dos and tasks and planner items, things like that. And then we've also got social media. We've got YouTube and LinkedIn, probably in the business world. But of course, some businesses will use things like Instagram and Twitter and bits and pieces in their marketing efforts. So how do we aggregate all that information back together again and bubble it up so we can determine how effective those disparate applications work together? So first thing to point out is on the Power BI bit. We're not going to go into Power BI in detail today, even though it's part of the Power Platform. We have got another webinar coming up, which you can see on the side there on Wednesday 24th. To talk about Power BI as a whole and how we kind of grab your data and make it useful so you can make business decisions around that. So hopefully you can come back and join me for that. But to talk through the other bits in the Power Platform, which you may or may not be aware of, we've got a tool called Power Apps. And the idea of that is to create really rich, we call it no code. It means you don't need software developers necessarily sitting there writing code. It's very much a drag and drop interface to be able to create kind of rich, engaging UIs, what we call user interfaces. Those user interfaces work on any device, so they work on phones and tablets and mobiles, as well as your PCs and your laptops. But all of the kind of control about sizing and spacing of those items is managed by the Power Apps tool. But it's great when you've got business processes that maybe you want to run off of an iPad, for example. You know, people in the workshop or in the warehouse, they want them to run around with iPads and fill in forms and fill in bits of information in a UI that's sort of useful to you. It also has the ability to leverage the components of that device. So it might be able to use the camera, for example, to scan a barcode and put that information straight into a form that gets submitted off to the Microsoft environment or back into your management system. So Power Apps is a really powerful tool. The bit we're going to focus on today is Power Automate. That's really all about how we streamline our business processes. So I won't wait on that too long. We're going to come back to that. Power Virtual Agents. I'm sure many of us have been online to various websites. You know, certainly your mobile phone provider probably. You've clicked on live chat. You end up with this sort of chat bot that comes up and asks you various questions, probes you for bits of information, and then comes back with a relatively intelligent response. That's a Power Virtual Agent in many cases, okay? But now that's really been bolstered by Copilot, the AI technologies, ChatGPT, to make those Power Virtual Agents a bit more intelligent, to come back and give you a much more kind of defined and well sculptured response. And then we've got Power Pages, which probably not really designed for larger organizations. But if you're a small business, you're looking to get your website up and running, and you need to create some online rich kind of web content. Power Pages is a great way of doing that. It's a bit like the sort of GoDaddy website builders, where you drag bits and pieces in, you type over it, and you can create a really rich web page that can surface up information from your Microsoft 365 environment as well. So actually quite a cool tool, fairly new as well. So, but all those things are supported by three really core components, and these are things called data connectors. We're going to talk about a connector a bit in a mo. The AI builder, that's where ChatGPT and Copilot's functionality comes in to make these things more intelligent and more powerful. And something called the Dataverse, where we effectively store data, variables, numbers, and bits and pieces in the cloud so that we can reference them later. So just to give you a bit of a heads up, we are going to cover some relatively technical topics as we go through this afternoon. Don't worry too much about following it. I'm trying to kind of meet the audience. We've got a few technical people on the call and people that are not technical. So if you want to dig into more detail, please just reach out to us. We're happy to kind of do these demos one-on-one and keep it at a pace and a level that you're happy with. But so it won't go too deep, but it won't be too high either. All right. So that's the Power Platform, as we call it. It's worth saying that within your Microsoft 365 licensing, standard, business premium, bits and pieces like that, if you're in the enterprise SKUs, then you get more and more functionalities. You got that tree. But there are parts of this platform that are available to you already within your 365 environment. And a lot of this functionality is actually free. Some of the more advanced, clever stuff, the AI integration, comes with bolt-ons and bits and pieces that you need to be able to leverage some of that stuff. But some of those licenses are included in various Microsoft 365 SKUs as you already purchased them, okay? So let's take a little look at Power Automate and what automation is, okay? I mentioned a minute ago, we've now got platforms that are more disparate than ever. We might have our CRM in Salesforce. We might have a MailChimp sending out emails on behalf of our platform or our organization for marketing purposes. All of these things rely on something in the middle. How do we get Salesforce to talk to MailChimp, let's say? What's the process in between? At the moment, it's probably a human being kind of doing stuff. But with Power Automate, that can be the thing in the middle that gets information out of one and pushes information into another third-party application. It does that by using connectors. Now, there are over 10,000 connectors that you can see. I'm just scrolling through a bunch of them here. There'll be some names in there that you will recognize. You've got your Salesforces in there, you've got your HubSpots, you've got MailChimp, you've got all sorts of different platforms. But don't worry if, hopefully some of these you'll be recognized, like Adobe, Adobe PDFs, you can EchoSign, all that kind of stuff is built into these platforms. But don't worry if you can't see your application there. If you've got like an industry specific ERP system or something like that doesn't exist in here, you can actually build connectors. So it relies on something called an API. If that platform has an API, then you can connect to it. You can actually get data out of it. You can push data back into it. And depending on that API's functionality, you can do a lot of that stuff automatically as well. So loads and loads and loads of different apps and services that now exist. It's a really mature marketplace for third-party connectors. But hopefully, just to summarize the idea of automation, what we're talking about here is the idea of look at all those processes in your business where human beings have to do something. They have to sit at a computer and copy information, maybe out of a spreadsheet or type it into a new system. What we're looking to achieve here is a bit of productivity boost by streamlining that, by taking the human being out of it and allowing the computer to actually just automate that process. There's a few benefits to that. One, accuracy is probably a really key one. We're not going to mistype. But ultimately, it allows that individual to focus on other tasks, to be more effective within your business, to go and work on bigger projects, bigger resources, without the need to sit there plumbing in data potentially. So, look, loads and loads of connectors. I'm sure you'll see some of them, some of those things that you might recognise. This is all available online. If you go and Google Power Automate, you'll see there's loads of bits and pieces in there. All right. The other part of Power Automate, we have two kind of versions to it. Power Automate in the cloud and Power Automate desktop. So what are the two differences? Power Automate cloud means that I don't have to install. I can create automation and I can create processes that automatically happen and do things and grab data, transform it, make a change to it, and then put it somewhere else. That can all happen in the cloud without you needing to install anything on your computers, anything on your desktop, anything in your server environment. it can entirely, assuming all the information it needs is based in the cloud, so it's Microsoft 365 to Salesforce or to a third-party app. We call that the kind of a cloud flow, all right? A change, a transformation, a process that happens in the cloud. But unfortunately, a lot of people still have legacy-based applications that are kind of running on premise, as we call it. So they're still running from your server. They require a human being to click on things on a desktop application. So Power Automate Desktop is here to solve that problem. If you are familiar with the concept of a macro inside Microsoft Excel, they've been locked down a bit nowadays for various security issues. But a few years ago, macros were very, very common inside Excel. You would open something up, and click a button, and it would go off and grab various cells and calculate a response. It might spit out a document. It might automatically click on cells and change values for you. It's kind of what Power Automate Desktop is, but it's widened from just Excel to anything on your computer. So the Power Automate Desktop can click on your Start button and go Start, go up to Programs, open up that legacy application, type in a username and password, it will log in. It might be that you're trying to get a report out of that old legacy system, so in which case it will click File, it'll go to Export on that platform, and it will go and choose a Excel spreadsheet or a CSV or something, and then export the data, give it a name, pull it out, save it in SharePoint somewhere. So that whole process, that whole thing that a human being has to do traditionally, where you're clicking around the environment trying to do things, you can just automate it. So you can click a button and it will happen on your desktop, all right? And to some degree, it takes that responsibility away. It means you're not going to make a mistake when you do that export. But it might also be that you're plumbing in an invoice and actually you keyed in the invoice somewhere over here. We just now need to lift that and have that put into a different system. Or maybe you're going to pull the information out of an Excel spreadsheet and automatically have it typed into your third party or your older system or your legacy system that maybe isn't cloud-based. Okay? Lots of things you can do with Power Automate Desktop. So Excel automation, it is the new idea of a macro, so it makes sense that Excel's there. Web automation, so maybe you want to go and scrape some web pages, rather than scrolling through 12 different pages trying to get information. Maybe you're going to say, look, here's some key titles that I want, product portfolio or something, maybe looking at an online shop. And you want it to go and grab the title of all the items they're selling and then click next to the next page and grab the next couple of titles of the items they're selling, the prices, grab all that data and store it in a spreadsheet for a bit of competitor analysis. Then scraping, web automation, absolutely great tool. Desktop automation we talked about a minute ago, so I can do anything on my computer. Anything that I can do with a mouse, I can do within Power Automate Desktop. And basically you record it, you hit record, you go and do the thing you need to do, you hit stop record, and it will map out all the clicks and all the things that you did and you clicked on various tasks, and it will record that, and then you can hit play and it will do it again. So Power Automate Desktop, very, very powerful, but slightly different to where we're going to focus today. We're going to focus on that cloud side a little bit more, but Power Automate Desktop, very, very powerful tool. So what I wanted to do is just get stuck into the action really, really quickly and show you some cool stuff. These are all very simple flows around automation, but when I go out and speak to people, probably the biggest thing I get asked about now, and obviously hopefully you're aware I talk about AI quite a lot and what it's going to hopefully do within the industry and the risks associated with that as much as the benefits. The one question I always get asked is when can I get AI just to respond to my emails for me? And my answer generally is, well, it can do that now, but there are various pitfalls. There are various things that we need to be a little bit conscious of. It is good, but it's not amazing yet. It's not a human being, let's be honest. So what I wanted to do is give you an example of how you'd achieve that inside Power Automate, because that is generally what you end up with. When we talk about AI, actually, most of the time, these conversations aren't about the AI functionality. What people are looking for is the ability to automate something in their business, and they're hoping that the AI engine, the co-pilots, the chat GPTs of this world can actually just do things a human being does, right? Because that's a human being. The truth is actually what you want is something that can think, which is the AI element, but the actual doing is done by automation, all right? Chat GPT isn't going to start writing emails and sending it out of Outlook. You still need things like Power Automate to drive the doing element. So let's have a look at a little customer service bot. So this is a little video we put together. This is what you see when you log into Power Automate. This is the screen. There's various templates and bits and pieces that are available to you there. And what we're going to kick off and do is start by creating a new piece. Although I'm not sure that's playing. Let's have a little look. Give it a go. There we go. Right. So we're going to create a new flow. And we're going to choose automated cloud flow. We'll go through the rest of them in a second. And I'm going to give this flow a name in this scenario. So I'm going to call it a customer service response, okay? And the first thing I want it to happen is I need a trigger. I need when something happens. So I'm going to pick when an email arrives in my inbox. That's going to be the trigger, the thing that makes this flow happen automatically. So every time I get an email to my inbox, this flow is going to run. So you can see that the UI is really clean. It's just drag and drop. There isn't a huge amount of code required here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the little plus underneath it. And I'm going to add an action. And we're going to go straight for AI Builder. Let's do the exciting thing first, okay? And there's loads of different things we can do within the AI Builder. We can get it to extract information from documents. We can get it to kind of understand and change language and translate bits and pieces. But in this scenario, I'm going to use the GPT engine and to basically transform my database on prompt. I get this window, okay, and I go in there, and this is a bit like ChatGPT. For those of you that have used it, a bit like Copilot, for those of you that have got Copilot. And I'm going to put in there, I'm going to get a prompt. I'm going to say, you're a customer service representative. I've received an email that requires a courteous and upbeat response. Please, could you help me draft a reply that conveys gratitude and a positive tone throughout? So when it gets an email, I'm telling the AI engine what I want it to do with that response. Okay, when it receives that information, how do you change it? There's a few technical bits we've got to do here. I'm creating a value called email body that's going to store the content of the email that's been received. We embed that in the prompt. Okay, so, and I changed the prompt slightly. So I'm adding a value in there. We call that thing a variable. So now it says, you're a customer service representative. I have received this email, and then the content of the email. It requires a courteous and upbeat response. Could you please help me draft that response? Okay, brilliant. So before I hit save and I hit go and we go for it, I need to test this out. So I'm going to put a little bit of text in my sample data so I can test its kind of ability to respond to what I'm asking. So I've put, I ate at your restaurant and was very unhappy with the food. Okay, brilliant. So we're now a customer service representative. It's going to have to respond to an email that says they're not very happy. And it comes back and says, basically, dear customer, thank you for your feedback. Really sorry that you've had a bad experience. I'll let you read that whilst I look at you and talk. But effectively, it's coming back with a pretty good response. However, at the bottom, it's signed it off with brackets your name, brackets your company, da 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 da. So I need to give it a bit more context in my prompt. So I'm going to do a bit of manipulation there. So I'm going to say sign off the email, kind regards, Scott's Kitchen. Okay, so I'll test that again. Let's go and see if it's done that. Perfect. At the bottom now it says kind regards, Scott's Kitchen. So you get the idea. We need to sit there and mold that prompt to get the kind of response we want. I can tell it to go back really sharp. I can tell it to be horrible. Obviously, I'm sure we wouldn't want to be doing that. But I can change the tone and what it's coming back with. Maybe I want to offer a voucher. Maybe I want to do various bits and pieces. So once I'm happy with that, I hit save, which you can't quite see down the bottom. But away it goes. It does what it needs to do. So we now got two steps. An email comes into the system or into my mailbox, and it's automatically sent to this AI engine that's going to do something. I'm going to give it some bit more information here. That value we had, the email body, technically I'm just telling it where to get the email body from, the box above. The third step is, well, now we need to send an email back again. All right. So step one, email into my mailbox. Step two, transform it using AI. Step three, send an email back again. So here I've chosen the next step. This time I'm going to choose send an email. Perfect. It's going to go away, spin around and have a little think. And whilst it's doing that, it's important to understand that in this scenario, obviously it's going to send it back to the person that sent the email from. So I'm going to use something called a dynamic value. Again, don't worry if you don't follow this, but we're going with when an email arrives, there's a bit in there called a from field. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to type in a subject. Maybe we're just going to call it Scott's Kitchen so that the recipient knows it's in regards to our customer service response. Maybe it's something else. We're going to use a dynamic field there again. Again, here we're going to use dynamic field, and underneath create text with GPT, I'm going to choose the text. That's the value that the AI engine has spat out. That's its response, if that makes sense. Right, we've done it. That is how you set up an environment where you can receive an email into an inbox, use AI to make a change, and send it straight off again. So it's not actually hugely complicated to do within Power Automate for a very, very simple response. However, the keen-eyed amongst you will be aware that that's actually a bit of a risk now. I'm just changing that title at the top. Obviously, I don't want to, if I'd saved that now, everybody that sent me an email would be getting a very weird email back right now. So I've just changed it to my email address so that if any of you email me in the next 5 minutes, it doesn't come back with a weird response. But notice that banner at the top. What that's telling me is that, hey, do you realize you've just asked AI to respond to people without any human involvement or any kind of understanding of what's going on at that point? You probably need to get that checked. You need someone to sort of put an approval step in, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So we've saved it, no problem at all. I'm going to go away to my Outlook now. I'm going to send an email to my mailbox. All right. And I'm going to try and put Scott Weedon in, no problem at all. And I'm basically going to put a complaint in there. Maybe I want to put some positive news in there. If you give this a go yourself, see what you get as a response. But I'm going to put in that I was very unhappy with the food, something along those lines. In fact, I was very unhappy with the service from memory. There you go. And let's see what the AI engine comes back with when I send that off. Okay, so very unhappy with the service I received at your restaurant last week. For the sake of time, I won't bore you with a longer email. Let's just send it. So that email's now gone. It's out there. It's traveling across the internet. It's going to come back into the mailbox. And we can see here, if I go and refresh my view in Power Automate, what I'm looking for underneath that 28-day run history is all of the time, every time that flow runs, it will appear in the list. So it hasn't quite appeared yet. So let's do a refresh. And then hopefully this time you can see now that it's running. Okay, so we've got a task that's now running. AI engine's crunching that response. It's formulating a response. It's going to send it back. Okay, let's give it another little refresh and see if it's actually done it. Once it's completed, we should see succeeded next to it, the little green box. Brilliant, we can see it succeeded. Now, of course, I don't have to come in and refresh this all the time, to get this to work. That's just happening in the background. I don't even need to log into Power Automate for this to happen. It will just happen automatically in the background. There we go, we've got two emails. We've got an email that says I was very happy with service. That was the email I sent. And here's the response. Dear customer name, bit of an issue. Thank you for reaching out to us and bringing your concerns to our attention. We sincerely apologise for the negative experience you had at our restaurant last week. We strive to provide excellent service to all our customers. It's disheartening to hear that we fell short of your expectations, etc., etc., etc. Everything written inside that email was formed by ChatGPT, by Copilot, and the response that's gone back out isn't really steered by anybody other than ChatGPT. Okay, so really, really powerful on how to get response back. But obviously, there's a bit of an issue there. It's a custom name, right? So that flow is very simple, but there needs to be more work done there to say, actually, in the prompt, take the customer's name from their email address if you can, right? Maybe respond to that. Maybe if you've got all your ducks in a row and you've got kind of your voucher system, maybe you want to go back and just automatically use another flow that says, go off and access the voucher system, generate a new voucher and give it back to us as a code, and then embed that in the email and send it off to the customer so they get 10% off next time they visit. All sorts of things like that. Maybe you want to be able to reference, really sorry to, maybe they've got a booking platform. That customer came in, you can check by their email that they booked through the booking system with that email address and that they were here last Thursday at 9 o'clock. And maybe want to go back and respond and say, look, we're really sorry to hear you didn't have a great experience last Thursday at 9 o'clock. Much more personal approach. Looks like someone really put some effort in there. But actually that response has gone back out in a few seconds. So in terms of productivity and response, great. You might want to actually put a delay in there. You might want to put a delay for 20 minutes. Otherwise, you send an email and get a response back straight away. It either looks really good or it looks like no human was involved in that at all. So use a little bit of sense. I might actually make them more irate. And certainly don't send them an email saying, dear customer name. That's definitely not upset. So you can see how Power Automate is really easy to drag bits and pieces in, and we're going to show you a few more examples, right, in a mo. So what different types of automation sit within the Power Automate platform? We've got automated cloud flows. That's things that are just happening based on triggers. So someone's saved a document, someone's changed a document, you've received an email, maybe you have created a new task, a new to-do, maybe there's a Teams channel that has had a post in it. Anything that happens inside those environments can trigger an automatic flow, but it's not limited to Microsoft. It could be when you create a new contact inside Salesforce, when you create a new opportunity, when you create something in HubSpot, when you receive an email into your marketing campaign or someone clicks on a link. All this stuff can be detected. Assume you've got that integration via a connector to that third-party application. It means that when something happens over here, Power Automate's going to transform it, do something clever, and then put that information somewhere else. And in terms of putting it, it might be writing that to a spreadsheet. It might be sending an email. It might be sticking a post online. It might be doing all sorts of things, or writing writing back to Salesforce maybe. So automated cloud flow is very powerful, but triggered by an event, something that happens. Instant cloud flow, that's where I just want to go and click a button. Maybe you've got a process in your business that needs to be run automatically, but actually only happens when a bunch of other things are in play. and it happens roughly the 23rd, but it's never exactly the 23rd. It's, you know, it's roughly around that area, but it's much easier for someone to log into Power Automate and hit run, or even use the app on their phone and hit run, and it kicks off this automated flow. You've also got scheduled cloud flows. So this is where you know that every month something's going to happen. So we've got an example in a moment around expenses. A little nudge for an email always goes out on a certain day every month, but that requires a human being to sit there, type an email out saying, hi, everybody, just to remind you that your expenses need to be in by X date. Da, 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 da. It takes up 5 minutes of someone's time, maybe 10 minutes of someone's time. So why don't you just automate that and give that person a bit of time back? Describe to design it. We did that, or we're going to do that in a little bit. So basically, that's where AI comes into it. I can type a prompt. You can say, well, actually, I don't know how to build all this stuff and like find the right connectors and add stuff in and values and whatnot. So I'm just going to give you a rough idea of what it is I'm looking to do via a prompt, and the Power Automate go away and build you that flow for you, just based on some of the text you've given. It needs more than that. It needs to know what documents to access, what it's trying to achieve, but it will give you a good start for 10. Desktop flow we talked about a minute ago. That was where we can automate everything on our desktops, you know, in that environment. And process mining we're going to talk about a little bit later. So let's go back to another video very quickly. So scheduling emails. This time, rather than using automated flow, we're going to create a scheduled flow. So here we're going to go create. This time we're going to go and hit a scheduled cloud flow at the top. Fantastic. And it's going to ask me a few bits of information. So it's going to say basically, like, give me a name. So this scenario is going to be me sending out an email to everybody saying, hey, reminder, you need to put your expenses in by a set date. So I'm going to say, let's start this flow next month, about the 23rd. It could go at 10 o'clock. I want it to kick the flow off, and I want it to happen every month. Okay, brilliant. And hit create. What we end up with that is now a kind of a beginning of a flow. So we've got a recurrence item there. Remember the last time the trigger was when an email is received. Now it's on a recurrence every time it happens. Probably want to change the time zone to London rather than US time. This goes out at 10 a.m. US time. So happy with that. We're going to go and add an action. This time we're looking to send an email. So I want to type in Outlook, and it will show me all the things that I could do that are related to Outlook. So you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff. All these other connectors come underneath and all the things we can do inside them. But we're going to keep this simple, and we're going to send an email. So I click on send an email, no problem at all. I'm going to give it who does it need to go to. So typically this might be all your managers, your directors, or anybody that files expenses, you fill people, things like that. I'm just going to put my name in again, just for the sake of testing. Give the email a subject, so we call this expenses, and then I've just put, hi all, personal expenses will be paid on the 28th and need to be in and approved by the 23rd, otherwise payment will be following month, whatever it is you might want to say. So it's just a nudge of an email, but it's going to save me 5-10 minutes every month just by doing this. Make sure it's connected to my mailbox, which is what was happening there, and that's done. Again, really simple to create. Now that's just saved, that took me 3 minutes to create, but it's going to save me 5-10 minutes every month. So again, we can see here now it says at the top, your flow is ready to go. I'm just going to go and test it. So I'm going to hit run flow. And what's going to happen at this point is I go back and check my email, and let's see what's happened. Okay. Those of you that know I always get loads of recruitment emails will have spotted that. Yes, another recruitment email. But hopefully within a minute or two, we're going to receive an email from Power Automate, and there it is. So I want to check that. Am I happy? Yeah, hi all, passing expenses paid the 28th, blah, 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 blah. So now I can forget about that. Going forward, we are always going to be sorted out with that email kicking off and having a set date every month. All right, I can change that schedule. I can do whatever I need to do. I can go in and edit and modify that task if needed. All right. So again, saved me 5 minutes. Took me 3 minutes, saved me 10 minutes a month. Do lots of that, might even win half a day back. What about automated LinkedIn posts? All right, so this is probably now linking out to those third-party SaaS applications. Again, these are really simple things. It will take me a long time to show you a demo of something a bit more complicated. We've got a limited amount of time. So, but automated LinkedIn posts, a bit different this time. What I'm going to show you, if you're not really sure where to get going on Power Automate, why not just use this prompt? So I've created a prompt that says create a flow that posts to LinkedIn every Monday using information stored in a row on an Excel spreadsheet, and each month it should post the next row. So what I'm saying here is here's a spreadsheet. You can see it's going to give me some ideas. So recurrence, get a row, and then create a LinkedIn post. So what it's going to do is it's going to take a spreadsheet, maybe the marketing team, every month sit down and go, what's the marketing campaign? What are our LinkedIn posts for the next month? And they key all of that into a spreadsheet. They've got an image, a link to an image. They've got the little post piece that we need to put the description of the actual post. Maybe there's some call to actions, whatever. Okay. What we end up with there is it's going to create me dynamically this kind of flow. So you can see we've got recurrence, we've got get a row, we've got create a LinkedIn post there. Okay. And I can go into those things. Recurrence, yeah. Is it going to be every month? Get a row. What's the spreadsheet that the information is going to come from? So I'm going to need to feed that into the system. And then obviously creating a LinkedIn post. How do we go and post it to LinkedIn? Then every Monday, let's say, or once a week, whenever I schedule it, it's going to look at that spreadsheet. It's going to grab the next row in the spreadsheet, and it's going to go and formulate a LinkedIn post and post it off. So think about a bit of cost saving there potentially. I'm sure many of you may have platforms that you pay for where a lot of the scheduling is happening automatically. Those of you that in the past have used things like TweetDeck, post to Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and things like that, then this is a great alternative, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, it's all baked within the 365 environment and potentially doesn't really cost you anything because it might be within your 365 licensing as it stands already. So, and you can leave that to run forever, okay, and off you go. Right, let's go to something a little bit more complicated. Approvals are always something that happen in most businesses, whether that's a holiday request that someone's got to approve, whether that's a policy document that somebody that you're making a change to and you need a manager or director to approve a policy change. What does that look like? Okay, now this is a bit more complicated, so we're not going to do a demo because we're here all day showing you how to build that. So approvals, you generally start with a template. It's probably the easiest way. You can see there's a few different ways of doing this. So you can create all of these things. If I click on them, they start me off effectively. Create a planner task when a Microsoft form is submitted. All right. So maybe it's an approval requirement when I go and fill in a form. That form could be anything. It might be a delivery note. It might be a goods in receipt. It might be goods out. It might be an invoice. It might be anything that I fill in, right, that needs some level of approval. I can fill the form in, hit save, and it goes through an approval process, right? And then when it gets approved, in this scenario, it would create a task in Planner if you use Planner. It might create a task in your to-dos. It might just send an email to somebody. It might do whatever. But in this scenario, that's how you could use Planner and embed organization and a bit like a mini version of project is what Planner is. You can also, let's look at the one below it, request approval. Everyone must approve for a selected item. So maybe I make a change to a document. I save it in a location inside of OneDrive or SharePoint. And the act of saving that somewhere or making a change to a document in that folder triggers an automatic approval. And it sends off emails to 10 different people, 10 different managers in the organization. And it requires each of those managers to approve that change. And if they all agree that that change can happen, then automatically the document is saved. It's upgraded in that SharePoint environment. If you think about how you might do that today, I imagine we probably grab an email, you make some changes, you save it to an email, you send it to a manager or director. A manager director then goes, yeah, I'm happy with that, sends you an email back, says, yes, no worries. How do you track who approved that? You have to go and get into those two people's mailboxes to understand how that process happened and who actually approved it. With this, you've actually got a whole list of approvals. You can see everything you got approved in your business, who approved it and when it got approved. But you might not want 10 people, you might just want one person. Well, that's the option below it. Just as long as somebody approves it, we're gonna push it forward. What does that look like in a Power Automate flow? We saw this nice, easy drag and drop thing. Well, this is where we bring the idea of a logic in, okay? Because sometimes you need to ask a question, well, what happens if somebody says, no, I don't agree, all right? What happens if they reject that change? Well, you need a condition, don't you? You need something that says, if everybody agrees, do this. If somebody doesn't agree, then do this, do a different action. And that's where you can see here in this picture, I appreciate it's pretty small, but we've got kind of true and false conditions where we say, if this thing happens, then do this, if it's true, and this if it's false. And that then branches out, and you can see how very quickly the complexity of a Power Automate flow can grow quite quickly. All right, it's important to understand that if you look at your business processes, whatever they are across your business, whether it's a goods in process, a goods out process, whether it's a financial process where your sales orders and your purchase orders need to be raised. Where are the conditions? Where are the stop points where someone's got to make a decision about whether that happens that way or that way? And how do you map that out? Have you even got that mapped out? And if you haven't got that mapped out, I've got a great answer for you in a minute. But you can see how quickly these things can scale. All right, and you can have different actions. It might be if they say no, that you just write it into a spreadsheet. It might be if they say yes, it automatically saves a document somewhere and and sends everyone an email saying this policy has been updated X, Y, and Z. So logic is brilliant, but as you can imagine, they can get quite complicated. That's probably the point where you want to start looking at reaching out to third-party organisations that can support that, or looking at kind of skinning up some of your own internal staff around that. Find people that have got quite a logical brain and tend to be best at it. So moving on, what happens when everyone receives an approval email in this scenario? So we've sent this email out, we've changed the document, uploaded a new policy, it sends out 10 emails to 10 different people. Well, what happens there is that those people receive an email and it says, well, it looks like this. And I get a nice easy button at the bottom that says approve or reject with a link to the document that I've changed. So in this scenario, we've got a holiday leave request for 2 days. It's probably gone to that individual's manager. The manager can click on it, have a look at it, have a look at the dates, and if they're happy, they can just click approve in their email, and automatically that gets approved. Maybe the next step after that approval process is to send an email back to the employee saying, yeah, holiday's approved. Maybe it's to write it into their calendar. Maybe it's to write it into a shared calendar, like the holiday calendar. Maybe put it in the manager's diary as well, so that he knows, or he or she knows when that information or that employee is off. So you can see it doesn't require anybody to log into Power Automate, look at a list of approvals, find the right one, press OK. Just directed straight at you in your face, and you kind of receive an email, click approve, and approval process done. All tracked, all audited, brilliant for things like ISO when you need to be able to show that process and how processes work within your business. So look, we've shown you there some really high level kind of examples of automation. Now, as you can imagine, the world's your oyster. There are so many things that you can do within this to streamline anything within your business. Even if it requires a human decision now, you can get AI to have a stab at it. I don't suggest you let AI just drive decision making inside your business. Probably not a great idea, but it could at least have a go at it based on the information it knows about your business. And then maybe you have a thing like an approval process where you go, yeah, I'm happy with that, and it happens. And suddenly you're going to cut down all the wasted time of people kind of mistyping stuff, errors within your business, mistakes that are being made. But that's great if you really understand the processes that exist within your business. Now, if you're a large organization, you've got lots and lots of people within it, the managers within each department have probably got their own internal processes for their department. How do you get visibility of that? How do you understand how how things move around your business? And that's where process mining comes in. And there's another feature of Power Automate. So we do this within the Power Automate environment again. So log into Power Automate. If you don't know where Power Automate is, by the way, I should say, if you go to your waffle, which is in portal.office.com, the icon in the corner, it's called a waffle because it looks like an American waffle. Click on that and you'll see all your apps. Hopefully one of those is Power Automate. If not, click on see more apps, and hopefully it'll be in there somewhere. But you can see there's an option on the side there called process mining. All right, and we're going to kind of get started on that. There are two types of mining. One is process mining and one is task mining. Process mining is all about grabbing logs and information and data that you already store. So maybe you're exporting all of your Salesforce information, all of the log, the activity. User A created a new opportunity at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, made these changes to that opportunity, turned the opportunity into a quote at 4 p.m. All of that stuff gets recorded and logged, as we refer to it. You can then extract all those logs and feed it into Power Automate to map out processes within our business. We've also got task mining. If you can't gather logs, you can kind of record user activity on a desktop, so you can see where they clicked, how long did it take them to get through that process on that old legacy system, what were they doing, what do they key in, what are the keystrokes. A little bit Big Brother maybe, but if it's used for the right purpose, then useful. So we're going to focus in on process mining here. And you can see there's loads and loads of different places where I could go and fetch that information. I appreciate there's lots of technical terms in there. Again, don't worry too much about that. That's kind of what you lean on your IT teams or us as your IT partner to assist. But you can see there at the top, we've got things like Excel workbooks, we've got text and CSV files, we've got XML and JSON files. If you are in that world, you'll find if you go into any of these sort of third-party applications or any application really and export a report, it comes out as a CSV potentially, it comes out as an Excel spreadsheet maybe. Newer applications use things like JSON. But look at the bottom there, about third row up, you've got things like Salesforce objects and Salesforce reports. So if you use Salesforce, a lot of this stuff's sort of out of the bag for you. You can just hook it straight in Salesforce and start to process mine within the data that's being stored inside Salesforce. What do I mean by data? Just to be clear, That's kind of what a log file looks like, all right? It's a bit like a spreadsheet, an Excel thing. It's tabular, it's kind of got information. But the key bits of information in here are, we have things like a role, who did it. We've got an invoice value there. So how much money was this process doing? This is around a finance process, so and about refunds. But we've got start timestamp and an end timestamp. So I can see how long it took for that thing to happen inside the business. And what was the thing, the last bit there being the activity name, it was an invoice entry. Okay, fine. So we're grabbing all of that data, compiling it down into a big sheet of how long it takes us to do things, how much money's involved in it. Once we gather that data and we turn on process mining, it starts to intelligently tell us what's going on inside the business. Okay, so you can see here that they refer to these things as cases. So whenever that process happens start to end, it's referred to as a case. All right, there were 133 cases as showed by the little middle icon on the right hand side with little circles around it. 133 processes were triggered. It's the same process, but it happened 133 times based on the information from the logs. It took an average of 2.39 days. And the amazing thing is, it's even mapping out on the left-hand side, that little sort of graph, when this task happens, when it's so a process, as you imagine, is made up of lots of tasks, right? It's mapping out those tasks. So this task happened, and then there was, half the cases or half the requests or processes that happened split. Some of them went this way, some went that way to different tasks. Those tasks then split again, and there were these other actions that happened. And this allows us to get really clear visibility of how things move around our business, which I think is hugely valuable when we look at optimization, improving efficiencies and bits and pieces. So let's have a look at this. You can see this is a process map, and it's saying the top item there is invoice entry. Apologies if you can't quite read that, but there are 133 processes, of which 68 of those processes went on to the next step below it, which are check customer payment. And 65 of them went across to confirm payment received. They were the next steps. So there was a decision made, either went that way or that way. Of the 65, then 56 of them went round to, down the bottom there's 101 refund with standard voucher. And of course, there's other flows from other parts of this process feeding back up the tree and back in again. But the bit I want to point out is that it doesn't matter. We had 133 things come in, and we had 133 things come out the bottom. Good, we haven't lost anything. But actually, there is one task there where everything that happened kind of funneled through it, and that was the complete the customer memo piece. Now, that might not be a problem. Maybe that is just a fundamental part of the process. But the next piece I want to know is, okay, well, how long it took? It was taking a certain amount of time on average to get a case resolved. So let's have a look at how long these tasks take. This time, using that information, it's able to tell us that 2.38 weeks is the average time for an invoice entry. Now, if it was 2.38 weeks, I'd be having a meltdown, let's be honest. But this is sort of dummy data. But we can see how long each of these steps take within this process, each of these tasks, how much time is involved in, and where can we optimize, where can we streamline, where can we improve, where can we make our processes quicker. And you can see actually that completing the customer memo section with the box around it took 2.94 weeks. So every time this process happens, 2.94 weeks to get just that bit done, okay, which is probably a key point for us to focus in and understand why that's taking so long. Can we improve it? Can we optimize it? And finally, we're looking at money here, right? This is a financial process. Maybe this is a cost or a revenue. Doesn't really matter for this example, but we can see that in total of those 133 cases, we processed £182,000 worth of invoices, let's say. And actually, if we look back at that, complete the customer memo, £90,000 worth of maybe these aren't invoices, maybe it got delayed by 2.5 or nearly 3 weeks, right? Now, that's, for me, I'm looking at that going, right, okay, well, hang on, maybe 90 grand that we're not invoicing. It's taken us 3 weeks to invoice it. That's going to really hit our cash flow. We need to sort of sort that process out and get it sorted. Maybe we didn't even realize that was happening. Maybe just assumed it takes that long. So a brilliant tool for those of you in a position where you really want to mine and understand your operational efficiencies across the business and improve. And where you find those improvements, you can then go back to things like Power Automate and back to things like AI to streamline and become more and more efficient. So a couple of little things to avoid. Hopefully you're still with me, but we've got AI, okay? We called it out a minute ago. AI is fantastic, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan. However, do not have it just responding to customers off the bat straight away, okay? But for now, get that human being involved, make sure you're getting that approved and checked before it just wildly responds to people. You never know what it's going to say. You never know what it's going to promise to a customer. It can just make things up, if you watched me talk before. So be a little bit cautious about using AI. Make sure you're approving it. Complex flows, they can get really, really complicated very, very quickly. I encourage you to use more simple flows where there's an input and the output might be a trigger for another more simple flow, rather than building this monster that's got loads and loads of conditions and steps and tasks within it. Make simple flows and stitch them together. Makes it easier to troubleshoot, makes it easier to understand where things are going wrong. And it also means that you haven't got this Goliath of the thing that maybe one person in your organization understands. And then thirdly, error handling is something you need to consider. So what happens when the process fails? If it's keying in an invoice, maybe you're taking data out of Salesforce, putting it into your operational platform. What happens when that invoice doesn't come out of Salesforce, or what happens when that piece of information doesn't come out of Salesforce and go into your operational system? Does it just get lost? How do you know that's gone missing? You probably need another step, an error handling, saying if this doesn't work, send an email here or flag a Teams message to somebody or whatever it is you want to do. So a few little common challenges that you need to be aware of, all right? So you'll be glad to hear that we are a little bit under the hour. Hopefully that has been useful to you. I appreciate it's a really technical topic. So if it has sparked any interest and you want to find out a bit more and talk about some of those processes, then I encourage you to get in touch with us, have a chat with us. We can show you something a bit more detailed around maybe some of the processes inside your industry. It's very hard to pitch something to lots of people in different industries that will resonate. And also, it does take a bit of time to put these together. So you can see they're very, very simple. But if you've got any questions, please feel free to fire away. So can we have a copy of this presentation, please? Of course, we will put all of the videos that we do up on YouTube. So hopefully you'll be able to access that. So the marketing team will reach out to everybody and let you come back in and watch it. And hopefully that'll be useful to you. Any more questions? I hope everyone got that as well. I appreciate it can be quite a technical topic. But if you are interested in whether or not these applications can talk to each other, go and look at your applications and find out if they have an API. That's probably step number one on this journey. Do these third-party apps that you use have APIs, right? Application programming interfaces? If they do, there's a really good chance that you'll be able to get things to happen in one, transform data, and push it into another, okay? Right, no more questions. Very exciting. No problem at all. Right, well, if you are happy and you want to go out and stand in the rain, please go for it. Bear in mind that we have got lots of webinars coming up, and we're kind of covering lots of bits and pieces. If you're in the education sector, we've got an education webinar coming up soon. We've got a BI webinar, so talking about data and understanding that. And going forward, we're constantly doing these Microsoft tips and tricks. So if you joined me for the last one we did a week or so ago, we'll be focusing on different products and services within the Microsoft estate, showing you some tips and tricks inside of those bits and pieces. But if you're happy and you're done, please feel free to sign out and go and enjoy the rest of your day. There are some more questions here, actually. Thank you. Do we present to individual businesses too, and if so, what costs? So it depends what you want us to present. I'm more than happy to come. I always enjoy talking to people. So to some degree, if you need me for a bit of time, I'm happy to come down and we can come and present and we bring the team down. If you want me for a week, that might be a different conversation, but no problem at all. But no, I think we're all done then. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Enjoy your afternoons.